Greetings, guys, girls, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Today, we are going to be watching a video from my favorite conservative, Michael Knowles. Genuinely, he is my least favorite person. Out of all of the conservatives who make content like this, like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, etc., the worst. I can't. And I've had a few people ask me why. And I wrote it on one video kind of about him, but hopefully this one will give you a little bit of further insight as to why I cannot stand this man. And that is his response to Dylan Mulvaney's face reveal. So if you don't know who Dylan is, I am sure that you do, but if you don't know who Dylan is, she is a trans woman who a while back started to do her Days of Girlhood series where she came onto TikTok and she would post a video day one of being a girl and posting just things that she is learning about being a girl and her identity as a woman, and it's really lovely. She is so lovely and bright and bubbly, and she gained a really large following really quickly because of how lovely and open and honest she is. And obviously conservatives really don't like that, and so there are so many videos they make about her, constantly. But recently, she got facial feminization surgery, so she had her face redone to help her with her body dysphoria and help her feel more comfortable in her own body, and she's done a whole sort of series about that and talking about that, etc. But anyway, her face reveal was done a few days ago, and these conservatives being so quick to it all made videos within a day. So I'm going to be watching his and talking about it because I watched a little bit of it and I got 3 minutes in before I wanted to go on such a rant. I was yelling at the screen. I was talking to Kat. I'm listen to what the fuck he is saying. Listen to him. And so I decided to stop watching and sit down and watch it with you, and we'll talk about it together because I have a lot to say. This man, I hate him. So I've got my coffee in my custom mug that I spontaneously made 12 custom mugs one morning and just ordered them all because I have no impulse control at all. And we're gonna have a chat. But before we get into it, I want to say thank you to today's patron of the day, Caitlin Wright. I appreciate your support so much. Thank you so much for all of your support for all of this time. I hope that you enjoy this video. And if anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat or click the top link in the description. If you want to hear more about that, then you can hang around until the end or just go read about it. That works too. Anyway, let's get into the video.
I gave my take on Mulvaney. That he's not just a troll, he's not just making fun of transgenderism.
We're off to a really good start. I'm a bit confused in this, he's pretending to be a girl and then prancing around and making fun of transgenderism. I thought you didn't like transgenderism. So if that is what she was doing, then surely you would be on her side if she's making fun of transgenderism. Transgenderism, firstly, I'm pretty sure that's not a word. And secondly, that's obviously not at all what she's doing, but I really don't understand. Did you get your words mixed up there? Did you mean to say she was making fun of women? I mean, she's not. Neither of those things are true, but it is funny that those words came out of your mouth.
Even though he's prancing around and performing this ridiculous caricature of a woman, saying, it's my first day as a woman. I've cried 3 times today. Which is frankly somewhat accurate. Part of his performance is quite a caricature, but women do cry a lot, okay?
Obviously what she does is a character, but crying, that's pretty accurate. Women do cry a lot. Dude. See, this is my thing with him, is that he's the most just he's the one who back in my Christmas video was the gender neutral pronoun is he, him. You can't use they, them singular. It doesn't make sense. The gender neutral singular pronoun is he, him. This man says some things.
But a lot of his performance is an over-the-top caricature. And so some people thought, he's just a troll. He's just making fun of the whole thing. No, I don't. My argument was that this is an actor who's been trained in the modern style of acting, who is indulging the worst and most dangerous impulses of that style of acting, which actually goes back even before the group theater, even before the Strasberg method. It goes back to the Russian Moscow art theater director Stanislavski, and it goes back to Freud. And so it has ripple effects in our culture far beyond the theater.
I don't think he understands that people on the internet do have exaggerated personalities, but they are often exaggerated versions of themselves, you know? It's the like selective showing of who you are. You know what I mean? Like, I would say that I am very real on camera and in my online presence. I am very honest and true to who I am because I grew up on social media and I grew up oversharing. However, I am obviously not putting on a character, but I am much more like, I have a bigger personality online than I do in person. Like, my accent changes. When I turn on the camera, my voice changes, and I don't do that on purpose. That is like an automatic response. When I turn on the camera and I sit in front of these lights, I speak with a different voice. And that is just that's an unconscious decision that I make. I do not do that on purpose, but that's what happens. And I use bigger arm gestures, and I just have a much bigger presence. And because that's just what comes in this setting. I'm not lying. I'm not like putting on a character, but I am a like exaggerated version of myself. And Dylan is obviously the same, in which, you know, if you want to have an audience online, you have to have like a big presence. You have to be captivating. You can exaggerate parts of yourself without being inauthentic, you know? Like, that's the internet. I'm sorry. That's just how it goes.
Dylan Mulvaney comes out in this bizarre kind of ballet costume, not looking much more like a woman. His face looks a bit like Caitlyn Jenner, because Bruce Jenner, who after he revealed himself as Caitlyn.
So that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. He looks a bit like Caitlyn Jenner. Sorry. Bruce Jenner, who later said they would like to be called Caitlyn Jenner. That's so funny. You correctly named someone and then had to like correct yourself so that you misnamed them. That's hilarious. That's so funny because you just proved how easy it is to use someone's correct name, and it's actually easier to use the name that people want you to use than it is to just use a dead name. You know, you kind of just proved the point there, that it's just easier to use the name people prefer.
This was Dylan Mulvaney's face reveal. Whatever it is, he's not faking it. People don't get the bones in their face chopped up because they're faking it.
True. Yeah. So true. People don't get the bones in their face chopped up because they're faking it. You're right. Because Dylan Mulvaney is not pretending to be a woman. She is a woman, and she got surgery to affirm that for herself. You're right. She's not faking. Great.
People don't get other things chopped off. I don't know if he's done that yet or not. Don't really want to know either.
Then why'd you mention it?
This is a real delusion, and it goes a lot deeper than just some people following some deviant desires. This is exploding as a phenomenon. It is a social contagion. It's a social phenomenon, and it's because all the rest of us are indulging it with a straight face. If we as a society just said, nope, this is nuts, you have no right to do any of this, you have no right to call yourself a woman. If you refer to yourself as she and her, we are going to ostracize you for that, and there will be consequences in your professional and educational life, and we're just not going to tolerate that at all.
Okay. Sorry, I need to take like a couple of breaths here in order to get my words in order that I need to get out of my face. Okay, so I do not understand why you give a fuck. Why do you care what other people are choosing to do? How on earth does it affect you if that person over there decides they want to get facial reconstruction surgery? Why does it affect you what people do with their bodies in any way? Why does the name someone chooses to use have any impact on you? It doesn't. None of it fucking matters. None of it even remotely impacts you. What are you trying to do? For what reason? These people need to be, you know, punished. They need to not be able to work. We need to say, no, you can't do this. This is ridiculous. That was happening. That is still happening. You are enforcing that. People do lose their jobs. People get denied jobs. People are attacked for it. People do get sent to like conversion therapy. They are punished. That is a thing that is currently happening and has been happening for decades, if not centuries. And yet, trans people still exist. Because, fucking newsflash, it doesn't matter how people choose to express themselves. Yeah, it's like a mental and biological thing that happens, obviously, but that doesn't make it a problem. That doesn't mean it's bad. You know, like everything is technically like a mental thing that happens. It doesn't mean it's a problem. And people acting on that isn't harming anyone. So like, leave them the fuck alone, maybe. You forcing people into the closet and denying who they are benefits literally no one. We're only 3 minutes in, so I'm going to stop talking because I'm sure he will give me more to talk about.
If we were a little less live and let live man, then Dylan Mulvaney would live a much better life. Because the consequences of our live and let live, who knows, man? Maybe your good is my bad. Maybe your yuck is my yum. Maybe your man is my woman. You know what I'm saying, man? Are the consequences of that radical skepticism are now that this man is chopping up his face and engaging in even more destructive behavior that is not going to end well.
How? What is the problem with other people's fucking lives and doing with what they want with their bodies? It literally doesn't shut the fuck up, man. Shut up. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have anything to do with her, but you can leave her the fuck alone and leave trans people alone. They're not harming you. I know that you don't understand, but just because you personally don't understand something doesn't mean it's not real or it's bad. I also just want to add in here, these people talk about how transitioning or expressing gender in a different way is going to be the downfall of society and that it's abnormal and that it's this new social phenomenon. But transness and like being genderqueer and gender non-conforming, etc. has been around forever and is like an integral part of so many cultures around the world that were just disrupted by like Christianity and like colonization. Just so many cultures completely torn apart and cultures were destroyed and it was like beaten out of people to the point where like people aren't allowed to express that part of their cultures. Like third genders are an integral part of like Native American culture. Same within like the Pacific Islands and multiculture. Third gender is another very like important cultural thing there. And it is in a lot of cultures. We created this construct, this idea of like, if you have these genitals, you're a man. If you have these genitals, you're a woman, and you have to act these specific ways. We're going to put you in a box and you have to act like that. And if you don't, society will crumble. When it was never like that before. We made up those rules. We can unmake them. We enforced those. Like, for no goddamn fucking reason. For what? Just for order? Didn't fucking work. People just be miserable. So just like let people do what they want, you know? It doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so I think we're done talking about Dylan now. I think we're moving into a different topic, which I wasn't aware this video did, but let's see where he goes. Let's see what he's talking about.
A Google executive was fired for not being inclusive enough because this Google executive, you see, he engaged in a terrible crime. He favored good employees over underperforming employees. Apparently, this guy didn't discriminate against white people enough. In February of 2022, Adam Stewart, who's VP of Google's Consumer Government and Entertainment Division, told Olahan that there were, quote, obviously too many white guys in the division. And then in July, Stewart and the company's HR department, quote, encouraged Olahan to terminate the employment of a male member of his team and replace him with a female hire because it wasn't inclusive enough. Unless you fire the white guys and unless you discriminate against white people and against men, you're not being inclusive enough.
Oh my God, this man has no understanding of anything at all. That's not discriminating against the white men. How did you end up with a fucking team that is made entirely of white men? How did you get there? Because you were discriminating against people of color and women. That's how you got there. So then bringing a woman in isn't discriminating against the white men that are there. It's just bringing inclusion into it because they were discriminated against in the first place and prevented from being in that area. That's what it is. And I'm sorry someone had to be replaced, but potentially the woman who was brought in was more capable of the job, but wasn't given the opportunity in the first place because she's a woman, because that is something that typically happens. Like, I'm sorry someone lost their job. That is terrible, truly. And it shouldn't have to work that way. And I really hope that, like, you know, he lost his job for good reason. The US is weird and doesn't make sense to me in the sense that, like, you can just fire someone for no reason, apparently. In most places, you have to have, like, very good reason to fire someone. Like, very good reason, and it's a long process. So if it works like that, then he was definitely removed for a reason, and it wasn't because he's a white man. And they brought in a woman because they needed more inclusion, because there should never be a full division that is made entirely of white men. That is a very small, like, range of people to be making decisions. You should have diversity within your field, and if you don't have any, you really have to question how it got that way. Because it's not just, no, these people are the best at their jobs. No, they're not. That's the likelihood of every single person who's the best at their job being a cis-het white man is extremely low. Unless you don't hire any women in the first place. Which, why didn't you hire any women in the first place? Oh, because you think men are more qualified? Because you're discriminating against women? Shut the fuck up, dude.
Olahan says he's just picking the best people for the job. He doesn't care about race. He doesn't care about sex. He's just hiring the best people for the job. And he's favoring high performers and promoting them. Google says, yeah, maybe you are, but that's a problem.
Unconscious bias is a thing though, isn't it? Unconscious bias is definitely a thing. I'm hiring the best people for the job. I'm just choosing who's best. I don't believe you. You're hiring who you think will do the best job, and your unconscious bias is telling you that that is a man. Which is why there are diversity quotas, because then you can't just be listening to your unconscious bias the whole time, and you have to actually make the active effort to hire women and hire people of color to fill those diversity quotas, because otherwise, even if you think you have the best intention, even if you think you're hiring the best people for the job, you are letting your unconscious bias cloud your judgment.
If the argument is that non-whites cannot compete on merit, then the only solution is conscious active discrimination against whites. If the argument is that women can't compete with men on the merit in these jobs, then the only solution is active discrimination against men.
How is it discriminating against men if they are still in the majority of people being hired for these roles? How is that discriminating against men? If you are choosing like 9 men and 1 woman, how are you discriminating against men? Their chances are still so much higher. That is still discriminating against women. And it is beyond me to be able to sit there and say that that's discriminating against men. Get your head out of your ass, man. What is... Oh my God, the way you view the world is like... I am terrified of the world that you want to live in. Because it's 1950, really, let's be honest. You want to live in 1950, which is a terrible time for women and people of color, but that's how you want it to be. So,
If you see this in major lawsuits right now that will determine the fate of affirmative action, quote unquote, in college. What's affirmative action in college? It's saying that students of certain racial backgrounds cannot compete against students of other racial backgrounds on the merit. And so you've got to actively discriminate against the students of the more successful racial backgrounds.
Do you really not understand the reason why certain minorities of color are given more opportunities for scholarships and things into university over like white students, in the sense that there are a like number of scholarships you can apply to as like a Native American, or as, you know, an African American, or in New Zealand you have like Pacific Islander scholarships, Māori scholarships, etc. You are choosing to ignore the actual problem and the reason these exist. We would all love for it to not exist. I'm sure everyone would be so grateful to not have to have separate scholarships and awards and things for people of color. The reason they exist is because of the racism that has been at play for decades, centuries, and it has created the like, you know, socioeconomic environment that we live in, and it has meant that there are areas of cities and countries, etc., that are predominantly more of, you know, specific racial groups. Because of the racism that has been at play for such a long time, it means that a lot of areas that are populated with larger communities of people of color, they are stuck in a lower socioeconomic environment because they weren't given job opportunities decades ago, which meant that they had to live in more impoverished areas, which meant that they weren't able to get a good education, which meant that they weren't able to get into a good university, which meant they weren't able to get a good job. And then their kids were born into the same socioeconomic environment. They weren't able to go to a good school. They weren't able to go to it, etc. That's why, you know, because they weren't given the chance from the start. On average, they are born more likely into poverty and into areas that don't allow them the best opportunities. On top of that, they're already being discriminated against because of racism that exists within society. So the world is already against them from the get-go, you know? As well as we were talking about before, of the unconscious bias of people just, without even realizing it, will think that they are less capable. People have noted that applying for jobs using a name that is seen as, you know, a more like black name will get them less interviews than when they apply using like a white name. That is a thing that exists, and it would happen on scholarships as well. So they have to have separate scholarships in order to give more people from those cultural backgrounds the boost that they need. It allows them to get into universities that will open up job opportunities for them. But if you're coming from a place where your family doesn't have very much money, and you're living in today's society where university costs so fucking much, you need a leg up and you need that help. And it allows more people of color to go into the workforce and to break this fucking cycle that we have, where there is a like wealth gap between people of color and white people that shouldn't exist, because we are all equal, and if given equal opportunity from the fucking get-go, we would be more equal in a more equal positions of power, and there would be no need for any of this shit because it wouldn't exist. But it does, so it's needed. And it's not discriminating against white people, it's just allowing people of color to be starting at a similar level, which they should be in the first place. I think that I've talked enough about this. I think that I've gotten I think I've gotten mad enough. I think we've had a long enough conversation. And so I'm gonna leave it here because I've been talking forever and I need to calm down. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Drop a comment, leave your thoughts and your opinions, and drop a like, subscribe, all that stuff, you know, I really appreciate it. A massive thank you to my Sprout and Above patrons whose names are up on the screen right now. And a huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Wolf, Toulouse, Bobby, Josh, Mandy, Robbie, Ikazel, Kai, Jessica, Eldo, Ida, Queercore, Mick McKenna, Anna, Raven, Danielle, Elias, and Evie. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for joining. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/SavvyCat or click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos a day early, as well as podcasts a week early. And then for £3 and up, you get things like outtakes, bonus footage, a mini podcast, a monthly live stream, etc. So if you want to check that out, I would appreciate it greatly. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.